Alright, let's talk about something you might have heard whispered in hushed tones on the internet. A new world order. No, not the one with the Illuminati and lizard people, probably. I'm talking about BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. BRICS is making moves, shaking things up, and frankly, the old guard seems a little rattled. We're talking about a group of nations, representing a massive chunk of the world's population and a growing share of its economy, deciding they've had enough of the current global power dynamic. They're tired of what they see as a system rigged against them, led by institutions that seem increasingly ineffective, if not outright obsolete. So, buckle up, because we're going on a wild ride through the rise of BRICS and what this all means for the future. Back in 2001, BRIC was just a catchy acronym coined by an economist at Goldman Sachs. It highlighted the growth potential of Brazil, Russia, India, and China. South Africa joined in 2010, adding the S and natural resources. But it wasn't just about acronyms or rapid growth. They saw a system favoring Western nations, sidelining developing countries. BRICS organized summits, created a development bank, and pushed for global reform. Let's be honest, the UN, bless its heart, often feels like that well-meaning but slightly doddering relative we all have. The UN was established after World War II to prevent another global conflict, but it became bogged down by bureaucracy and the veto power of the Security Council's permanent members. The US, UK, France, Russia, and China still call the shots. Any meaningful action can be blocked by these countries, often for their own geopolitical interests. Is it any wonder that countries are looking for alternative systems that can actually get things done? Here's a fun fact. If BRICS were a band, they'd be headlining Coachella. We're talking about over 3 billion people, representing around 40% of the world's population and a quarter of global GDP. China's tech sector is booming. India's tech sector is booming. Brazil is an agricultural powerhouse. Russia has energy resources coming out its ears. South Africa, well, they've got diamonds. The point is, BRICS nations are becoming major players in the global economy, and they're doing it on their own terms. They're creating their own financial institutions like the New Development Bank, which aims to provide an alternative to the World Bank and IMF. They're also increasingly trading with each other in their own currencies, bypassing the US dollar and chipping away at its global dominance. Remember when your awkward teenage cousin went through that growth spurt and suddenly became the star athlete in school? That's kind of what's happening with BRICS right now. They're no longer content to just sit on the sidelines and watch the adults run things. They're stepping up, speaking out, and making their presence felt on the world stage. Take, for example, their stance on the war in Ukraine. While Western nations were quick to condemn Russia and impose sanctions, BRICS countries took a more nuanced approach, refusing to take sides and calling for a negotiated settlement. This doesn't mean they condone Russia's actions, but it does highlight their independent foreign policy and their willingness to challenge the West's narrative. They're providing an alternative model for global governance, one based on cooperation, mutual respect, and a recognition of the shifting balance of power. So what does the rise of BRICS mean for the future of global governance? Well, if you ask a room full of experts, you'll probably get a room full of different answers. Some see BRICS as a potential force for good, a counterweight to Western hegemony, and a champion for developing nations. Others view them with suspicion, wary of their intentions and concerned about their commitment to democracy and human rights. The truth, as always, is probably somewhere in between. BRICS is not a monolithic bloc with a single unified vision for the future. But one thing is clear, they're a force to be reckoned with. Look, nobody's saying that the BRICS nations are perfect. They've got their own issues, believe me. But they are, at the very least, an interesting thought experiment. What happens when the global South, tired of being talked down to, decides to write their own rules? What happens when the old systems of power, designed for a different era, are forced to adapt or become obsolete? We're about to find out. Because the world is changing, whether we're ready for it or not. And honestly, that's both terrifying and kind of exciting.